Can you hear me? Yes? I didn't connect the VGA connector, so it didn't work. How are you? Are you sleepy? How many NetSci people are in here? Few. All right. The other ones are WebSci. And the rest? All right. You're shy. Okay. How many? Did you lose any friends on Facebook in the last month? In the last 6 months? Do you use Facebook? No? Never lost a friend on Facebook? Or you never realize? You track it, and you don't lose friends. They're faithful. All right, so we're going to talk about something about weirdos that lose friends. And before talking about that, then let me tell you who am I. That's my name, Daniele Quercia. So if in the proceedings you were expecting a female, well, you didn't get one. The reason why I have a final E in my name is because I come from Italy, so I come from the south. I studied in North, in Torino, my master, then my PhD at UCL, then I was at MIT, postdoc, and now I'm in Cambridge. And mostly what I do is research in the relationship between the offline and the online world, right? Trying to understand the relation, if there is any relationship between the two. In particular, if that sounds a bit generic, then let me tell you that the last couple of years I've been studying the relationship between 3 specific elements that are language and personality, and how language and personality then relate in the use of social media like Twitter or Facebook, right? And just to give you a couple of examples of what we do is we study the use of language in terms of use of emotion words, right? So you can see how people use positive emotion, negative emotion words. And what we find out when we did that, this work was mostly, the social world of Twitter was mostly about trying to see whether brokers they do behave like those who have access to brokerage opportunities, and those who listen to Barstock, they may know what I'm talking about. Those who are brokers, then if they behave in a different way in Twitter, and as a byproduct of that analysis, we found also that people that are happy or sad, they do cluster together. So you would expect that because of homophily. Who knows what homophily is? Everybody should know that, right? Yes? Yes, 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 brilliant, brilliant. So that's pretty obvious, right? The people in terms of sentiment or expression of emotion words, they do cluster together. But the result is less obvious because if you plot your sentiment versus your average friend sentiment, then that is a straight line, right? So there is not, the association is quite strong. Anyhow, that's one example of language, and try to see how people use Twitter and they use the language in their tweets, but also you can all go beyond the individual level, and you can look at the city. So we look at the city of London, and we see whether people in rich part of London, what they talk about, right? And people in the private communities in London, what to talk about, right? And there you have two clouds. And 2 clouds, one is related to the private and the other one is related to the well-off communities. Which one is which? Who goes first? I have a limited amount of time for my talk, so you might want to go for it. So let's say the right one is about deprived, or is about well-off, is about well-off, is about deprived. Who says well-off? Who says deprived? The wisdom of the crowd works. So it's the private community. So the private communities in London, they talk about royal wedding in terms of gossiping. They express themselves in Spanish and Portuguese, and they talk about celebrity gossips. On top, Lady Gaga. Whereas people in well-off community, they talk about social media, environment, sports, and health. Now you may wonder, how do you know the topics of these tweets? Well, we use the topic modeling. And in the proceedings of this conference, there is another paper of us that is titled Tweet LDA. So if you're interested in a fast, kind of boring version of a machine learning way of extracting topic from tweets, maybe you might want to read it. But today we're going to talk about something cooler than machine learning, which is something around unfriending, right? Who knows what unfriending is? Do I need a definition? Apparently. Oh, not many people know that, right? Are you sure? I'll give you a definition. Right. So unfriending is basically the act of unfriending someone from Facebook, right? So you basically remove this someone from your friend list, right? And apparently it was the word of the year 2010 from the more, from a respectable dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary of English, apparently respectable, even for Cambridge people. And so it was the word of the year, and it's been widely studied as a phenomenon, especially on with surveys, right? So people ask Facebook users, why do you unfriend, right? And generally, they find people who unfriend each other. So they're not like you. There are people who get unfriended, right? Yes? Yes? Okay, cool. You believe me. And these surveys are quite nice, but they are designed with a specific purpose in mind. And I'll tell you the purpose, but if you look at the different surveys, the results are more or less consistent. And they point to one answer. Why do people unfriend each other? Because they are annoying, right? I promise not to unfriend you as long as you're not annoying, right? And if you look at a survey that is more, the quite interesting one done by McKinsey and Nielsen, what are the reasons of unfriending? Top 3, offensive comments, I don't know them well, I don't know him well, and trying to sell me something, right? Most of these surveys, they have the idea in mind that the relationship in Facebook are very different than the relationship in the real world, right? So the question that they have inside, they are a bit slightly directed towards a certain goal. And the goal is more or less the interpretation of the results. They are along these lines. The act of unfriending acknowledges that the definition of friend is different, right, in Facebook than in the real world. And actually, we don't have any quantitative data on Facebook apart, other than surveys, but we have studies on Twitter done by people in this room. And they're pretty cool studies. And what they show is that actually the activity of unfriending is very much similar in Twitter, very much similar to the activity of unfriending in the real world, when you're losing relationship in the real world. Right? So the only quantitative analysis we have actually point in the opposite direction of what this survey would point, right? So that's exactly why we try to say, okay, what's the truth here? And we run, to answer that question, we run quantitative studies of 4 predictors, right? Of 4 predictors that are generally associated with losing friends in the real world. Yes? Yes, you're following me? Right. Also this side? This side is NetSci? No, it's WebSci. Cool. All right, so the 4 predictors are personality. So I unfriend someone because it doesn't have a personality like mine or a weird personality. Just because in my social circle of friends, I need to balance a bit of gender, female, a bit of male. I unfriend you because there is a big age difference between the 2 of us, or I unfriend you because there are not many common friends between the 2 of us, right? Those are generally the predictors of unfriending in the real world. Now, the question is that true also on Facebook? And we try to answer this question in a quantitative way. Quantitative means that you have data. So we have data. We have 34,000, more than 34,000 Facebook users. 60% of them are women, median age 23, median number of friends 123. So I'm telling you these numbers not to really impress you, because I don't think I will be able to impress you with numbers. But the idea there behind this slide is that this sample is representative of the sample of the US population, right? The only slightly difference is that Facebook published the median number of friends is 130 in Facebook in US, and here is 133, so it's slightly lower, but we are not that far. So the sample we have at the end is pretty representative, and we can run the analysis of the 4 predictors on this sample. Right, so let's, to understand where we take the data, let's analyze the first factor, which is personality, right? So the next speaker is going to talk about personality. Is that true? Okay, so you're going to give them an introduction about personalities, so not spoiling the next talk, I'm going to go very quickly on the personality traits. Rombard said that there are 100,000 ways of measuring personality. Not entirely true. There are very specific ways of measuring personality. The most widely used way of measuring personality is called, you know that, but just because I keep on giving talks at Oxford, anyone? A big 7, 5, big 5, right? The big 5, thank you. The big 5 personality traits. So you take the test, you spend 30 minutes taking the test, and you get 5 numbers, each of which correspond to personality traits, which are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And previous research showed that neuroticism might impact the chances that someone doesn't like you and is going to unfriend you, is not going to be your friend anymore. And then to a lesser extent, extroversion and agreeableness, right? But neuroticism is basically a bit of a problem if you are emotionally unstable. Brilliant. So as the next speaker is going to tell you, you can do that. You can have a bunch of undergrads in your class. You can give them the test. You get these 5 numbers for each of them, and then you fall into the weird trap because you're going to have a sample of very weird people. They generally come from specific countries that are white, rich, industrialized, white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So to not fall into the trap, there are a couple of PhD students in the psychometric department in Cambridge, one of whom, I guess, built this Facebook application that is called My Personality. So you can go on Facebook, you can type in My Personality, you can download it, and you can take any sorts of test, including the big 5. More than 6 million people decided to do so, and we use this data. The only thing and a warning that I'm going to give you is that we don't know who unfriended whom, so we don't know the directionality. We know just that the given a tie was broken at some point in time, right? Yes, 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 yes. Are you bored? Okay, so I don't need a special effect, right? Right, so personality, that was the first factor for each. So we take half ties that are broken, half ties that are persistent after 1.5 years. And we analyze those 2 sets of ties. And we look at personality. Since we don't know who unfriended whom, we need metrics at tie level. So we measure, for example, the minimum personality traits in terms of extroversion. So we say, what's the minimum of extroversion level for A and for B? What's the maximum? What's the average? And actually, we don't do that for only extroversion, but we do that for the all other 4 personality traits. And consistently, for minimum, maximum, average, the results are the same. The only personality traits that are statistically significant, they are extroversion and neuroticism. And you might understand in which direction they go. So, if you're neurotic, you tend to be unfriended. And if you're extrovert, you tend to be kept and well regarded by your Facebook friends. Right? Yes, obvious. Right, the second factors, gender in triads. Gender in triads has been studied, especially in small-scale studies of, they've been trying different ways, and the most interesting study has been done among adolescents, so the social network adolescents. And what this study concluded based on ergon model and ergon analysis was that if you get triads, right, and you take a triad where I'm your friend, I have a common friend, and it's a male, our relationship tends to suffer, is more likely to suffer than if we were to have a female common friend, right? That's what they concluded. Is that true on Facebook? Well, we measured the fraction of broken ties in a balanced data set, and we know that 54%, if you have a common male friends, are broken ties, compared to the 34% that have a female friend in common. So if you want to keep your friendship with whoever you want, then just make sure that you have a common female friend. Age difference, that's the third factor, I guess. So that has been, that's obvious, right? Especially for marriages, but not only for marriages, apparently. So it has been shown that age difference matters when you decide not to be friends anymore. And that's what we find on Facebook. So if you plot the probability, on this invisible graph, but it's very visible on my laptop. So if you want to come down, and so you're from this graph, you would see, if you were able to see that the probability of breaking versus the log of the age difference of the two guys is going up. So which means the probability of breaking increases with the age difference, right? So, and you can actually see that as increases. So you can see some dots going up. Can you? All right, cool. It's not that bad. And in terms of, if you do a simple linear regression, you can see that 44% of the variability in terms of probability of breaking is explained by the age difference. Last factor, common friends. This is the most widely studied factor and has been studied also on Twitter because you have data for it, right? You can take the social graph and you can analyze the number of common friends. You can say whether the tie between me and you is a local bridge, meaning that we have many common friends, or is not a local bridge, meaning that we don't have many common friends, right? So you would expect what? If we have many common friends, it's a bit more difficult, right, to unfriend someone. Just because common friends is used as a proxy of social embeddedness, right? So the more common friends you have, the more you're embedded in the same social circle, the harder it is to break a relationship. And that, what we find in Facebook is exactly the same in the second invisible graph. So the probability of breaking now it goes down with the log of the embeddedness, right? So meaning that very highly embedded ties, then they don't break. Whereas ties that are not embedded at all, they tend to break much more likely. They are much more likely to be broken. And if you run a simple linear regression, then you would see that 72% of the variability is actually explained by the number of common friends on Facebook. So I don't know how I'm going to do with time. I can speak for another half an hour, but 1 more minute, brilliant. So I will go very fast by summarizing what I told you. That is pretty obvious, right? So whatever these surveys show is not entirely true. So the social relationship in Twitter, they're not that different from the real world relationship, also in terms of dissolution. So a tie is more likely to disappear between two people who are neurotic or introvert, have no common female friends, have large age difference, and are not embedded in the same social circle. And of course, friends are kept by Facebook, by other social networking sites, and age is kept, so you can actually build stuff, right? You can build a recommendation algorithm for friends and not really for unfriending someone, and you can rank the news differently depending on whether they come from someone who is likely to unfriend you or not. And the most important implication for me is that most of our real world networks, they've been virtualized. Our work network is in LinkedIn. Our friendship network is in Facebook. Our interest network is in Twitter. Those are real networks that have been virtualized, and trying to understand whether there is any difference in terms of dissolution between the real world and the online world is quite important to me. And with that, I conclude.